So, dude, you were in Ozzy Osbourne's house. Like, tell me about that. Mr. Greg, how you doing, dude?
Fine, and you, Mr. Marky Mark, what's going on?
I just want to give whoever watches us some context. I had this idea for the longest of time and actually wanted to get us in a room, but considering lockdown and all that, I thought of this idea that, you know, people around us in our circles have lived the most incredible lives or experiences. And to them, you know, it kind of feels like just a normal experience because it's, you know, they only have their life to compare it to. But I think there's people out there that will be blown away and don't really know what people around them have been through. You know, in your small circle, your friends probably do know, but a lot of them probably don't understand the significance of it, right? And there might be fans out there. So that's kind of the general idea I was going for. And I thought of you, and you're kind enough to agree to talk to me today.
I appreciate that. I'm honored.
So how's things going for you? I mean, considering lockdown and all. I mean, just in general.
Well, considering I work in the technical industry now, which is the end of the story. Maybe, I don't know if I'm in my autumn years or whatever, but I work in the technical industry in media and broadcast. So because everything is sort of on the network and internet and, all IP based, I can work at home quite happily. But it's been a long time because I traveled to Kenya right as the virus hit, and then I had to be put in 2 weeks quarantine before even lockdown started. So I've been home for a good 2 months now, probably a bit more than that.
Yeah, so. No, it's hectic, man. And even like there's days where I'm like, I feel a bit down and I can't pinpoint why. And I think like someone else labeled it for me so well. It's like lockdown blues. But also you don't want to complain because it's like first world problems. Because, you know, we have a lot better than a lot of other people. So yeah, man. But dude, I think maybe let's try dive straight in. So the reason I have you here, for anyone who doesn't know, Greg played for a huge rock band back in the day called The Used, and they are still around. They've been to South Africa, I think, once in Opikopi. They were in the height of like the emo screamo phase where I grew up and thrived. I was like, emo was my thing. Not so proud to admit it now, but so dude, if I recall, The Used started in about 2001. So like just off the top of my head, where was Greg around that time? Like young Greg, and as a South African, how did you know, what drove you to go to the States and how did all that happen?
Okay, it's a very long story that I'm sure your viewers and listeners won't want to really listen to in terms of the entire.
That's why you're here, man.
Progression. Okay, well, we can go back. We basically immigrated in 1994 because my parents at the time were Mormons, still are, and they moved to Salt Lake City. And I went to high school there and got into bands. And at first I was a skater, but then I got into bands. And we just started, it just became my life. And by the time I graduated high school, I was just I left home at about 19, and just sort of lived with friends, and we had our own place together, and we just used to jam and play music all the time. Till eventually I met a guy named Luciano Pesci. Okay, no relation to Joe Pesci. We called him LJ. And he had a studio. He was building a studio because his family was quite wealthy, and his mother had invested in him. And his partner was actually the pro wrestler Max Payne. I don't know if you remember Max Payne.
That's really random.
This whole story is actually a whole roller coaster ride of Greg from Benoni finding himself in the weirdest of places. Nice. Basically, that's what this is. So eventually I told them, like, look, if you let me come work at the studio, I'll help you build it and do whatever for free. I'll quit my job. I don't care. So I joined the studio, and Max became my my audio mentor. And I was doing my band on the side at the time, the band I'd been in since high school. And we were gigging with the guys from The Used in their original band, which was called Strange Itch. Okay. From there, they became Dumb Luck, and I continued working at the studio with Max. And then I was going to university, which the studio was paying for because I was doing a multimedia degree. And funnily enough, along this time as well, I got friends with Donny Osmond's son. I don't know if you would know who Donny Osmond is, but his family was basically like the Jacksons, the White Jacksons. They had sold 80 million albums worldwide at that point in time, like huge. Donny and Marie, never heard of it, Mark? Oh, geez, I am old.
I haven't, but I have to be honest. I'm not going to try bullshit my way through and be like, yeah, I totally know who you're talking about.
ask your parents, bro. They'll know. They were massive in the 70s, the 60s, and 80s. So anyway, eventually, if you've read the Used story, they broke up several times, got different members, and finally they settled on Bert as their singer. Wow, this is a long story. I hope you have time, bruh.
Yeah, no, I'm good, man. I mean, you're already answering one of my other questions, which was like how you actually got to know the Used and met them and ended up essentially playing for them. So, I mean, we're already segueing into that, which is cool.
Cool. Yeah, I know. So it was just because of the local band scene in Utah at the time, which was virtually oppressive. It was like Soviet Russia, bro. The cops did not like us. This is Mormon land, okay? This is Utah. This is like a really conservative society. So we used to do shows in like veterans, like Army veterans halls and senior citizens centers. And there are a couple of venues in the next bigger city called Provo, which is south of Salt Lake City, that we would play. But yeah, it was thin pickings, but we would play a lot of shows with Branden Steinekert, who's now the drummer for Rancid, and Jeff Howard, who's the bass player of the Used still, and Quinn Allman, the guitarist, came in later. He was a younger kid than me by a handful of years, but he was talented. And I used to go to we used to skate together actually, and I used to go to his garage and watch his band play, which is called Hey Santos, just a garage band, really just noodling around. But eventually, I mean, I'd known Branden and Jeff for years, but Quinn and I got really close. I'd known Bert from his other bands, like called Cobra Kai and I'm with Stupid, and it was immediately apparent he was a superstar, dude. From the moment you saw the guy, it was just like, this guy's going to make it, you know? And he did. But he was a heroin addict, just like the stories tell, and meth and drugs and just the whole homeless thing was all true. And Quinn and I got really close, and he took a liking to me, and we would play shows together, of course, with their band. And eventually he asked me to join the band as a touring guitarist when they got signed. But there's a whole other backstory to that too, that has to do with Branden, because he had made friends with John Feldman through his when Goldfinger were nobodies and would come to Salt Lake and play for like 3 people in a bar. Branden was there, and he happened to meet them and had kept a relationship with John Feldman. And it was about in 2000-ish when Goldfinger came to town for the X96 radio show called The Big Ass Show, The Bash. And they got us backstage and introduced me, and we sort of hit it off. And then one day I'm just walking down the hall in university, and I get a call from Quinn. They'd been out recording with Feldman, and they're like, dude, we'd really like you to be our touring guitarist. We're going to fly you out to LA for a week and come chill at John's house, and you can check out how he's recording, and we can jam. And I was just like, let me think. Okay, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
So it was like a dream come true, you know. The side part of that is you make some concessions, because at the time my band felt betrayed because I left them, but I said, look, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm not going to give it up.
Yeah.
And off we went, dude. I got a copy of the album of when it was done. I learned it in about 2 weeks. And then we hit the road to San Francisco, and we played at Slim's with Phoenix TX. And, geez, dude, my memory's fading. Phoenix TX was the headliner, and that's how we started. And we toured the next probably year.
Nice.
Yeah.
So offhand,
Straight.
dude, if you do have a song, do you have back then a favorite song to jam live? And is that different to like your favorite studio song from theirs? Because often like a live song, some songs just have a different vibe.
Yeah. There were some songs we didn't play just because at the time we were trying to just be the thrashiest, most out of control screamo band at the time. And what's interesting is that the Used, you would probably say the Used, Taking Back Sunday, and Glassjaw were probably the progenitors of that genre.
They defined it definitely.
Because, yeah. So, do you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
There's a couple other bands, but I mean, you pretty much nailed it. Yeah. I mean, I think there's Thursday,
in fact,
and I think Thursday, and there's a couple of other bands, but that are
Thrice.
Yeah, Thrice.
But they were sort of more on the fringe of like pop, metal, punk, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Used are widely credited for that. But in any case, what was my train of thought on that?
Yeah, we were leading into. I asked if you had a favorite song to play live, and if it differed from like a favorite studio song.
Yeah. So my favorite was probably just maybe Memories. That opening track was such a simple riff. It's two notes. Ding, 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 ding. It's just such a rocky song. It just kicks the crowd in the face. That was always our first song. Make a bunch of noise, use our pedals to just screw with the modulation effects and delays we had going on, and then Quinn would start, and it would just be this like explosion. And then Say Days Ago was also one of my favorites. Boxful, of course, and Blue and Yellow.
Yeah, Blue and Yellow is beautiful, dude.
Oh, dude. And Quinn and Bert and I would get to a point later on in the tour when I'd gotten really sort of comfortable to harmonizing on the parts. And it was a really beautiful song for me to share with who I'd now become close to. Bert and I had also become really good friends at that point. And we just harmonized together. It was just great, man. I was always the backup singer in the corner, playing my guitar, just doing my job, hired gun, best front row seat to watching your friends become successful, And I was quite happy with my weekly pay for that. They'd pay me out of merchandise, get free stuff all the time, fly around, nice hotels, you name it, dude. It was just a dream come true.
Yeah. So, I mean, mentioning on that, you said you guys toured for a year straight. And I know you told me once off camera, obviously, that it was brutal. Like you guys were playing, I think on average at like 2 shows a day or something like that. And you toured for a whole year straight.
Yeah, it wasn't always 2 shows a day, but sometimes 2, maybe 3. And sometimes we'd need to do like back then, it was 2002, but they were still doing like web streams, hey? Like AOL and Yahoo were doing live band web streams, which you can still find online on YouTube. And, touring life is not for the faint of heart. It seems all glitz and glam, but there's a lot of hard work, especially in the beginning. Once the band started doing well, then we got guitar techs and, proper bass and things like this. But in the beginning, you're carting your own stuff around, doing your own strings,
For sure. So, dude, in that whole time of touring with them, like just offhand, I mean, what are some of the bands that you got to share the stage with, so to speak, or just, be in the same gigs with and perhaps meet? Were there any stick out bands?
Yeah, there were plenty. You got to remember the Used and Glassjaw were the first bands in history to do Warped Tour and Ozfest back to back. We jumped right off the last show at Rikers Island in New York and went to Milwaukee to play Ozfest. So in between just those 2 tours was like basically a who's who I grew up listening to. Bad Religion, for one, my favorite band of all time.
That's mad.
I saw them 46 times in a row every single day. It's from the side of the stage, nogal, dude. And obviously Goldfinger was a big influence for me. Lagwagon, and then who was some of the other? There were so many bands on that Warped Tour, man. No Use for a Name, NoFx, of course. Oh, if you got time, I got a great story. with me and Tom from.
Please, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, go for it, man. Yeah, dude. Like, I'm so keen. This is what I want, is all these like stories that people go, what?
Okay. So throughout the tour, everybody basically gets a tour buddy. So on Warped Tour specifically, it's like a traveling flea circus. The tour starts with 250 people and ends with like 850 people, just because of all the stragglers they pick up. Okay, and everybody gets a tour buddy, and of course I had my bandmates who were all my close friends. But Tom from mxpx, the guitarist, and I got really friendly. And they all had their families and stuff on tour with them. They were obviously successful at this point.
Yeah, and also, I mean, they're a Christian band, so I think it's probably...
No, they still drink and party, believe me.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so Tom says to me, listen, because at the end of every Warped Tour show, there's a band that's on tour to barbecue for the bands. That's how they got on tour. They agreed to do it. Okay. Maybe they're an up-and-coming band, and, Kevin Lyman just said, if you barbecue for the bands every night, you can be on this tour. And they said, great. So we're at the barbecue after the show's done. All the groupies are there and all the bands are socializing. And Tom goes, hey, listen, let's split here. Let's go to the real party, right? So now the buses... How it works is that there's a lot of buses, like 180 buses on this tour. There's a lot of buses, maybe more. So they park in like a square, the guys that get there first, and it's always Bad Religion, NoFX, and the old guard bands. So they park, so they make a little quad, and then they set up their own little enclave party. So Tom now takes me through this maze of buses, because only he knows where it is. And it opens up, and there's my heroes all sitting around. Fat Mike's got a poker hat on. They're all playing poker with the cigars. There's sushi. There's beautiful women everywhere. Greg Hedson from Bad Religion comes out the bus with like two hot babes that are like 30 years younger than him. Jay Bentley's like flipping shrimp on the barbecue. And Tom's like, hey, this is Greg from the U's. And like, everyone's like, hey, dude. And they like give me a beer. And like, we all just hang out. My mind was just like blowing out of its skull, dude.
Yeah. Like, don't go into fan mode. Like, hold it together. Yeah. Hold it together.
Hold it together. Hold it together. So that was a real special moment for me, because for just that moment, you feel like they're your peers, and that you're on the level. But of course you're not.
Yeah. You probably see that a lot of it's in your mind, like it's a lot. I mean, they probably just treated you like everyone else, and you like, I'm not these guys, But dude, so I had a question that I had in my mind that I was keen to ask you, but you kind of might have answered it for yourself. But so like, I'm assuming, I mean, did you still have a thick South African accent by then, or because you grew up there?
No, I'm going to confess right now that around high school, maybe before that, I started speaking in an American. I mean, I was quite young and impressionable.
Yeah.
I was 13 when I moved there. When you're different and you're 13, it's difficult. So, Americans can't understand the South African accent. So over time, I sort of put on an American accent. Well, I spoke like that, but I don't know if I was putting it on, but it just,
I mean, like for you, it must have been so much more exaggerated. When I was growing up, like, I was always like, yeah, dude. And like, because I was just trying to be a cool emo kid. But I mean, for you, you actually really had to do it. You had to be like Americans. So that's why I was keen to ask the question, if like you stuck out like a sore thumb, or by then you're kind of like integrated.
Yeah, it was kind of that thing when I went home to my mom, all of a sudden it would come out more, But my brother still sounds American. He's lived here 10 years, he was there 18 years from a kid. So I still have little inflections in the way that I pronounce words, but yeah, I sounded pretty American back then. I'll admit I did.
As any used fan knows and has seen a couple of the, videos of them touring and playing, Bert was pretty famous for throwing up all over the crowd.
He wouldn't do it over the crowd. He would actually do it on stage. It actually started when he was in the band Cobra Kai with Donny Osmond's son, Jeremy, who was the guitarist. And he would have to have a bucket side stage to throw up because he screamed so like heavily, you know?
Yeah, because that's actually what I wanted to ask you is like, I didn't know if it was because of just how much he screamed or if it was because he was like hammered or something or.
No, he actually became pretty straight edge and vegan later on.
Hectic.
So when I was with him, he was a vegan, and because of John Feldman's influence, of course, I love the guy, but he's a vehement vegan, and he tried to turn me, and I didn't quite turn. And I think it put a bit of a sour taste in his mouth with me because
I don't know if you ever saw, dude, at the end of Goldfinger's one album, they have that unreleased little video there, and they show all the animals being abused. So yeah, he was hardcore.
Yeah, he's hectic. But he sat me down at his house. He's like, "Greg, come, I want to show you something." And he sat me down and showed me all these PETA videos, and I was just like, he was so when I was finished, he asked me what I thought, and I said, "John, I really appreciate the cause, and it really sickens me, but I don't think I can stop eating meat." And I think he saw that as a bit of a weakness because, to be quite honest, there was a bit of a pushback about me in the beginning of the touring.
Okay.
They felt I wasn't fitting in to their band's sort of image and stuff. And I had to work on it until eventually Feldman told me that I had achieved that actually at a show once. But anyway, going back to what you were saying.
Yeah, no, we were just talking about the throwing up and stuff.
Yeah. So he would throw up on stage, but only in the beginning. As he got sort of more stamina and from touring, it kind of stopped. It became messy.
Okay, yeah.
But he did do it, not on the crowd though.
Okay, and I know I saw this one video, and I don't know if you were around that time where they were doing the album, and they talked about locking Bert in a cupboard and beating him with pans and pots to get him to like make a scream. And I just didn't know if that was press or if it was like they really did that.
No, that's not how I know the story. As far as I understood it, it was just Bert being crazy and pulling out the pots and pans from the kitchen itself. on that first record, when you hear him doing that, it's actually him in the kitchen with the mic on in the studio capturing all that chaos. But no, nobody beat him with frying pans.
So, dude, you were in Ozzy Osbourne's house. Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, that's another mind blower for me, and I still can't believe that it happened because, of course, here I sit in Joburg as a 40-year-old chubby dad. You know? So basically, Bert and Kelly started dating during Ozfest because she was sort of tagging along with their brother on the tour. She was quite young, eh? She was 17, but Bert was only 19, so it sort of was okay. And her and I became pretty good friends at that point. She really took a liking to me. For some reason, my sense of humor was on point back then when she was around. I think I was just trying to impress her. But what happened is what we do? We had a 1 week break during Ozfest or just after. And all the rest of the guys in the band decided to go home to Salt Lake City to see their families and to chill out because it was up until then we played 280 shows straight. So, you know, it was nuts. And Bert comes to me and he goes, "Listen, dude, Kelly's my girlfriend, but I'm so nervous." And you wouldn't expect this from him because he's the most outrageous extrovert you've ever met in your life. He's like, "Please come to LA with me. I'll pay for your ticket and for everything. Just like come with me as my wingman, basically." And I was like, "Sweet, let's do it." So we fly to LA. We stay at the Hyatt on Sunset, which is the most famous rock star hotel in Hollywood. And we were there for a week, and we hung out at their house for like a week and just went to clubs and did crazy rock star shit, dude, honestly.
Yeah, and you just happened to, by chance, I suppose, you were on the Osbourne show. Because, I mean, I think there's footage that you've showed me.
Yeah, it was the first day that we landed after she picked us up from the airport in Ozzy's X5. And back then, that in America, that X5 was like, wow, okay. Not messing around. This is Ozzy's car. I mean, Ozzy's car. So we get to the house, and I shit you not, there were about 30, 40 tourists outside Ozzy's house and the cameras go off and we get rushed inside, and the production office was set up in the garage. We walked through there, and that clip on YouTube that you see is me coming out of the garage into the house, and the camera's like right in my face immediately. And you can tell that I'm totally out of my element. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, I realize now that I'm on a TV show. It was weird.
Jeez, that's surreal, dude. Like,
yeah.
So dude, I don't think I've ever asked you this, like just in random conversation, but how did it all sort of like end? I mean, did it end well, or did things end awkwardly? I mean, like, what essentially, I mean, this is two questions, I suppose, but I mean, how did things end the used, and then how did you choose to come back to South Africa? Like, how did that?
Okay, there's two questions, there's two answers. There were two reasons. And the first and main one was that when I joined the band, through their management, who at the time was Freeze Entertainment with John Freeze and Paul Gomez. This Paul Gomez knew everybody, dude. He was like friends with Dave Grohl, and he would take us to these backstage parties and stuff. But anyway, that's a side note. They promised me that Warner Brothers would help me to get a visa to stay in the United States and become full-time employed. So I shit you not, I went with Quinn and met with Tom Wally at the time, who was the head of Warner Brothers, one of the biggest names in the music industry at the time. And he said, this is easy. I'll just get our lawyers on it and it'll be done. It'll be great. So I get a call. Sorry, we can't help you. Your situation is too specific. Like there's nothing we can actually do for you. Because I'd given all of my documentation over to them to take a look at, and they were just like, there was no loophole for them. So that was number one. Number two, and I think the band knew this, because we had to go to Canada to do some gigs which I couldn't go to, and that kind of put a damper on the relationship a little bit, because they felt that I was now part of the band and supporting them, but I couldn't support them in another country because I was an immigrant.
Yeah.
So that played a part. And then another thing was in San Antonio on Ozfest. I went with Bert and Kelly to Kelly's 5-star hotel while the band was staying in a bus. And everyone slept late, and I was trying to get Bert going because we'd been doing some naughty stuff the whole night. And but honestly, I got up early because I knew we had to be at what call time was, but nobody would get up, and I couldn't get the bus there. I made a million calls, but we were late and we missed the show because of that. And I think they used that as sort of a way out to go, look, we can't help you with the visa. We're going to tour to Europe soon. You can't come. Let's just call it quits. And I was like, cool. They're like, all right, well, we'll end on the big ass show, and that can be your final show, and big hurrah. And I said, cool. And I was quite happy with that because I was already the luckiest guy in the world. So as far as I was concerned.
For sure, dude. And I mean, I've seen you occasionally, no, not often, but like, if I can't remember, I think it's Quinn, like that you chat to on Facebook and stuff. So yeah, as like any awkwardness or hard feelings passed, I mean, it's been so much time now.
Of course. I'll always love all of those guys. Even their drummer now, Dan Whitesides, Quinn and I used to go and watch his band shows in awe of this guy, and that's why he eventually ended up in the Used, because Quinn always had an obsession with Dan as a drummer. And Branden left to go play with his favorite band of all time, and Quinn got his favorite drummer of all time, and everyone was happy and everyone moved on. So when they came to Ozfest, Oppikoppi, everything was amazing. It was like seeing my best mates again. It was so great. They're such great guys. They really are, and I do miss them.
Yeah, it's one of my biggest regrets. I actually missed the Used because I couldn't make that Oppikoppi. So it's like, no, it's probably one and only chance to see the Used locally. But
well, originally it was supposed to be Chevelle.
Okay, but Chevelle did eventually come. I saw them. They came to
they
some
cancelled.
casino.
I think they might have come on one of the other big shows, like what's that one that?
Yeah, dude, it was a small little casino show, and I can't remember that Chevelle played. I still remember I had sitting seats. That's all I could get. But that was way later, way later.
Yeah, no, I think they did come. I think you're right. But for Copy, they cancelled, and
Yeah.
Use was the last sort of resort that they could get hold of to come, which worked out in my favor. It was a great way to see my friends again. And then my wife at the time was like, "You should ask them to play." And I was like, No. I don't want to impose anything and expect. Next thing I get a call, and it's Quinn. He's like, "Dude, we want you to come play with us." And I was like, "Okay." But I couldn't remember the song, Mark. I had to practice it for like a week.
Yeah, but that's kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, even there's some things that I don't even remember how to play. I'm not much of a guitarist, but I like strum 4 power chords, and I'm like,
Oh, you used to be.
Put it down. Just put it down.
You used to play?
Yeah, man. I was a part of a couple of like garage bands and stuff, but nothing ever massively huge. And that also, I was in the scene like when you had gotten back and you were playing in Reach and stuff. I was like in the crowd supporting, and your name in Neon, Rife, Dead City Centers.
Neon, yeah, Dead City Centers.
All those bands, man. That was like the height of, and I got along well with a lot of those guys, especially the guy, the lead singer of Rife, if you remember them. His name was Z.
Yeah.
They also had quite a like screamo feel to them. Dude, I'm gonna get like a tad deep at the moment. Well, it depends how you answer. But like, is there anything you can think of at the top of your head, like lessons that you might have learned back there in all that craziness, that is carried through to you now?
Oh, absolutely. It was basically one of the main foundations, and there's a few different layers to the foundation, but that was a main one in my music career in South Africa, and my audio engineering career, because I got to watch really great professional American sound engineers and musicians play and do their job or their craft for years. It was amazing, man. Had I not had that experience, I would not be sitting here right now. There's no doubt about it. And I mean, I moved into working in the technical side of broadcast now, but even that was even that's related because of the Pro Tools things that I support and install and project manage, etc. That all comes from, some of that comes from sitting next to John Feldman and watching him edit the Used album. It was incredible to watch a professional work. So yeah, of course, so many.
So having said all this and all we've chatted about, I don't want to put too much pressure on you, but like if there was for some reason like an 18-year-old out there now, like, similar position to you, not much to lose or whatever, having all the insight that you have now, would you recommend it? Would you tell them go for it, go mad, or would you have some like reservations?
No, I would tell them to, currently in my current state of mind, I would probably tell them to do something else. Because my particular story was just a complete perfect storm of happenstance. I was not the best guitarist in the world. There were better options than me to be chosen to go along on that journey with them. But I was in the right place at the right time in the United States, where rock music is lucrative and a good industry. In South Africa, I hate to say it, it feels like a pipe dream for most kids. I would say do it if it makes you happy. But as a career choice, I feel it's a terrible career choice, to be honest.
No, dude, and I feel you, man. Even when I was coming up in the industry, I looked at it and I made a call. It was this, I don't know how to explain to you, but this aha moment. I was sitting in college. I went and studied sound like most guys do. And I was like, there's no ways I'm making a career out of music. There's like 20 other better musicians here than me, and they're studying to be engineers. And that's kind of where I switched into the post-production industry.
Yeah.
I felt that at least there's, designated budgets and some kind of living can be made out of it, so.
Much better move.
And the music industry is also just changing so much, dude. I mean, you can literally make music from your bedroom now. I mean, it was always going there, but now you literally can. And that's just the competition I saw. I'm like, wait, so I'm going to try to build a huge studio, and someone in their bedroom can produce essentially the same music as me. So, I mean, there are exceptions, but
it used to be it was just electronic music and hip hop and things like this, but it's even going over to like djent. You can make a djent album in your bedroom because of the realism of the samples being used for the drums and virtual amplifiers and things like this. It's crazy now. You can, I mean, that have you seen that Abasi video for what are they called? That virtual amp company, Neural DSP.
Sounds familiar, but I can't say I'll check it out.
Dude,
though.
you must watch it. It is incredible what these guys sound like just with virtual amplifiers. It's nuts. You don't need an amp anymore. It really has come to that.
Yeah, and on top of it, I mean, if you think about it, dude, it used to be that when it was going there, the one weakness people would have is a drum kit, and they would MIDI drum and drums away. But now I mean, there's multiple programs that do it, but Pro Tools has collaborated. I can get hold of someone in Europe and be like, track drums for me. And they track a full multi-session and they send it to you and you mix it. Like, it's that simple these days. So
totally.
So yeah, and also I suppose with lockdown and stuff, I mean, touring and live events could also change. For how long, I don't know. But that's another whole random interesting topic.
Yeah, let's not get into that. It's a very deep wormhole of sadness and despair.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a slow decision, but it was a conscious decision to hang up my guitar and my audio engineering career, which I spent a good 50% of my life almost, well, at the time, pursuing. You know, I put in 15 years as an audio engineer. I put in even more than that as a musician. And I mean, I'm one of the lucky ones to say that I pretty much did everything that I set out to do, even if it was by happenstance and by the grace of the hearts of the guys in the used. But even after that, we did a lot of great shows here. I put out many records. I recorded some records that did well, and I'm quite happy with what I did. But it got to a point where, especially after the 2008 to 2012 recession, that I could see it was just going nowhere. And unless you were somebody like Adam Howard or Ian Osbourne or one of these guys that are constantly chameleonizing themselves in the industry, yourself included, you've survived. You're tenacious. But I just didn't have it in me anymore. Hey, I'd run my course, and
I have those days very more often than you'd think. But
well, you know, Marinis from Bluray.
Yeah. I definitely think we've kind of met, but we didn't know that we met, sort of thing. But I know face comes into my mind.
Well, he's an amazing engineer, and him and what's his partner's name? Bluray. Anyway, they've done really well for themselves, and he's a top-notch engineer, that guy. And we did Mumford & Sons together. I was with the recording crew with Johan van der Kolff.
Oh, yeah.
And he was doing front of house. And at the end of the night, when we were striking and pulling fiber cable from front of house and all this stuff, I said to him, dude, you know, do you still enjoy doing this? And he said unequivocally no. But but I think he said something like, but it's a lot nicer to cry in your BMW, you know?
For sure.
So something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, but I think a lot of guys feel that way. It's just very tough, eh?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that period, dude. Like, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but where I first heard the name Greg Bester was from Dead City Centers, when you engineered their album with that blue cover. Like, that was when I first heard you, the dude that played for the Used, and I was like, say what?
It got me a lot of business, I must be honest. But there were some bands that were disillusioned because not all albums work out the way that they expect.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, there were some bands that I won't mention that left with a bad taste in their mouth, and I never saw them again. Dead City Centers, I mean, that's, you know, it's like the engineer-band relationship, producer-band relationship can be very tenuous or very strong. It depends, you know. Some of them go, some of them stay.
Yeah.
But Dead City Centers was one of them. that was a good record. I think people liked it. But,
Yeah, dude, it was fun. I bought it, so I digged it.
Cool, man.
Dude, so maybe to begin to like sort of wrap things up, do you have, I mean, you just vaguely mentioned that you were like at a backstage party to like Dave Grohl. For those who don't know, that's Foo Fighters. If you don't know, I'm worried about you. But
I've got a story with that if you want to hear it.
But so what I was going to say is one random story. If you got 2 or 3, that's still cool. But like maybe just like one more random story from this whole experience that you can think of that's might just
Well, that was a pretty important one that stands out in my mind because, like I said, their management. The one guy was John Reese, and the other guy was Paul Gomez, and Paul Gomez was the contact guy, and he knew everybody. And we were in LA for some reason, and I don't think we were playing a gig. We were doing something else, but he said, "No, I've got backstage passes to the Foo Fighters show at the Hard Rock Cafe in Anaheim by Disneyland. So let's go." So we all go, and we see the show. Then Paul takes us to the after party, and then he introduces us. First, he introduces me and the guys to Taylor Hawkins and their bass player, who nobody can remember his name, of course. I don't know. Do you know his name?
No, I don't.
I forget. And next thing, Dave Grohl walks over, and he's always chewing gum because he's sober. "Hey guys, what's going on?" And Paul Gomez goes, "Oh, these are the guys from that band, The Used, I told you about." He's like, "Oh, The Used, yeah, I like that part, in the beginning with the drums. It doesn't sound anything like Nevermind." And he looks at Branden, "Who's the drummer?" And Branden looks at him and goes, "Me?" He goes, he like shook his head, like, if you listen to it, it's like a ripoff of Smells Like Teen Spirit, basically.
I've never picked that up, but I'll go listen for it.
It's when the chords really open up, like dun, dun, dun,
oh yeah, okay.
So like, it caught him off guard, and of course it's one of his heroes, and Branden just turned like white. Like,
yeah, froze.
Dave Grohl just gave me shit about ripping him off. Yeah, and then there were other times like we played the Warped Tour kickoff party with Boxcar Racer and Finch at the Key Club, and Pink was there with her boyfriend, that famous motocross guy that we got introduced to. We went to backstage parties secret parties at Sundance Film Festival with guys like Matthew McConaughey was there, Ray Liotta, Mariah Carey, Christina Ricci. Like, it was just nuts, dude.
That's insane. I expect you to drop some names, but not names like that. That's pretty out there.
Yeah, it happened now and again, Juliette Lewis was there. I actually have a funny story about Christina Ricci because Quinn and I were perving over her because we love Adam's Family, and she was just so cool, And I decided I was going to, now with my confidence, Mr. Rockstar confidence, walk up to her and speak to her as if we knew each other. So I went up to Christina Ricci and I said, "Hey, Christina, so good to see you again. How have you been?" And she looked at me as if like she wanted to respond like, "Oh, hey, you." Because she was trying to be polite. She didn't want to say, "Shit, I forget who this guy is." So we had a conversation. I was really trying to get in there because I was like, if I can get with Christina Ricci, I will be the legend of legends. But of course I failed, and she sort of nodded me off and I walked away. But the balls you have when you're 22,
Yeah, dude. That's crazy. That's awesome, though. What I do want to say is The Used did release a new album now in 2020 called Heartwork. So, I mean, if you guys are interested in the band or want to, please go check it out. I mean, this is centered around them, so might as well give them some love.
That last record they did with Ross Robinson was a departure. But this newer one is sort of back to their roots, I thought. They're still sounding quite young as a band. Bert always will sound that. It's crazy. He's like 39 or something, or 38, but he sounds like he's 19 still. Have you heard it? Do you
I've only listened to 1 or 2 songs, and let me just say I was keen to listen to more. So like I don't have a super big opinion yet, but I'm very excited to listen to. That's the crap thing is as you get older, all the bands you listen to stop releasing albums as frequent. So you got to like try find new stuff that you like, and you're like, why do I like nothing? I feel so old.
Exactly. Yeah, I listen to old stuff now. AC/DC, bit of old blues rock, Led Zeppelin. And I just reverted back to my old classics I listened to growing up, just like an old man. My punk rock and my Bad Religion and my Deftones. Oh.
Yeah, but punk will always have a place in my heart, dude. I mean,
totally.
I mean,
Millencolin.
Yeah, and when you played me that one riff that you recorded for your friend, straight up, like I was like strung out, and I'd forgotten about strung out. And so many people don't even know about them, like NoFX, all those guys. So
NoFX is great, dude. They're so good live, man. Honestly, what an amazing band. And one of the highlights of my life was when El Jefe came to me and said, "Dude, hey man, I don't know, I can't do a Mexican accent anymore." He's like, "Hey man, can I borrow your foot tuner, man?" Like I'm like, "Okay, El Jefe wants to use my tuner. That's amazing."
But Mr. Greg, thank you so much, dude, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You're totally welcome. Thank you, man.
Yeah, and I'm keen to see what people think about this when we put it out there.
Yeah, maybe they think I'm just an old, washed out kook.
We'll only know when we release it, so let's see how it goes.
Awesome.
Shot, dude.
Cool, man. Well, thanks. That was fun.
Cool.
Take care.